Happy New Year to all you beautiful music lovers and music creators. So on the 1st of January 2024, I celebrated my 10-year anniversary of sobriety. So I wanted to talk about my journey and how I got here, and hopefully share some insight on how I was able to permanently heal my addictions to substances. So part of the reason why I want to talk about and celebrate my 10-year anniversary of sobriety is because hopefully you can get to know me a little bit more on a deeper level, and I can share a little bit more of myself. And I hopefully want to inspire you on your journey to sobriety if you are struggling with the same issues that I was struggling with, over 10 years ago. For me, it's such an achievement to have gotten to this point because it represents the internal growth and the emotional work that I've had to engage over the past 10 years to get to this point where I no longer have any desire to harm myself anymore through poisoning my body with, chemical substances that don't belong in my body. And to get to this point of being 10 years sober is such a proud moment for me because I have been able to grow so much more and achieve so much more in my life just by healing my addictions to substances. It's my 10-year anniversary of being sober, and I just really wanted to do a video to celebrate this moment because it's such a big achievement for me, and it has absolutely changed my life so much for the better. For me, this journey has been all about healing intergenerational trauma and breaking intergenerational cycles in my family lineage. It's been about giving me, the little girl, a chance to grow and heal and follow my dreams. It's been about becoming a more loving person to myself and other people and the environment. It's been about giving myself the opportunity to turn my life around and to create a more fulfilling, meaningful, and joyful existence here on this earth before I leave. It's been about giving myself the opportunity to fulfill my purpose and my potential as a human soul here on this earth, and to give myself the opportunity to fulfill all of my dreams and goals that I have in life. It's been about giving myself the opportunity to develop myself as a spiritual being, to give myself the opportunity to get to know God, and give myself the opportunity to invite my soulmate into my life and to invite more meaningful relationships into my life, more meaningful friendships, more meaning into my life, more connection with myself and with other people. So there's been many reasons why I made the choice to start this journey to sobriety, and why I've stuck to it for the past 10 years, because I wanted to grow more love for myself. I wanted to grow more love for other people, because when you are in your addictions and you are doing things to harm yourself, it's a very selfish place to be in. It can be a very selfish and taking place where you only think about yourself. You only think about what you can get from the world. You only think about what you can take from the world because of the big hole that's inside of your soul that you're trying to fill up, because it's a very, very painful hole that you don't want to feel that's in your soul. So my journey to sobriety has over time evolved into so much more than just giving up these substances. It has been a very, very big turning point in my life. I didn't want to leave this earth not healing the deep trauma that was driving all of these addictions, or at least not trying to heal it. I didn't want to leave this earth at least not trying to heal myself and to break these cycles for future generations. So just to give you a very hopefully brief background on where it all began for me, like I said, a lot of this has been about healing intergenerational trauma. You know, before the age of 5, I was around drug and alcohol, whether that was my mum or other family members. You know, I witnessed my mum turning to cigarettes in times of stress, turning to drugs and alcohol, to party. You know, this was all before the age of 5. I was around drugs and alcohol. My sister, you know, is 10 years older than me, and she was smoking pot in her teenage years. And my first experience with getting stoned was actually when I was 5 years old, and my sister blew the smoke in my face so much that I actually got stoned, and I was jumping up and down on the bed, like spinning them out and just hyperactive. And that's all I remember is just jumping up and down on the bed, and it was like I had no control. It was just like laughing and laughing, and apparently then I just fell asleep. And when we were at the shops getting some food, like they said I was just like, you know, hungry, so hungry. I was just like hoeing into all the food. So that was my first introduction to me personally getting stoned from pot, was when I was 5 years old, and my sister blew the smoke into my face when she was, you know, getting high with her friend. But on top of that, like I said, I was witnessing my mum getting stoned and going out and partying all the time, leaving me with, like, you know, relatives or just relatives I didn't really have a connection with. That was on my Greek side of my family. While she would go out and party, sometimes just leaving me home with, you know, another kid who's maybe like a few years older than me, while she goes out and parties on the town. And I saw my mum, you know, getting abused by her partner at the time, and I witnessed my mum being strangled by her then partner, which was my stepdad, my sister's dad. And I witnessed her being strangled at the age of 3. And I just saw my mum always turning to substances to help her cope emotionally, because she didn't want to feel the pain that she was going through. I remember specifically one time being at a pub. We were traveling somewhere, and my stepdad wanted to stop off at the pub just for one, as they always say, just the one. And it ended up being like an all-nighter, and we were out in the car, and Mum was like, yeah, just really pissed off and wanting to leave. And at some point I went into the pub as a 2 or 3-year-old and was sitting on my stepdad's lap, and she was just waiting for me to come out of that pub, you know. And so once I came out of the pub, we actually took off and we left him there at the pub stranded. And we travelled to Cairns and stayed with my auntie and left him there. And he had to find his way there to pick up the car. But when we left there, the first thing that my mum did was pull up into somewhere and grab a packet of smokes, you know, because when she was with him, she wasn't allowed to smoke. So she grabbed a packet of smokes. So yeah, I've just witnessed my mum completely annihilate herself. Like growing up, I've witnessed all my uncles and aunties drinking, and it's just been a normal part of what I saw in my childhood, all before the age of 5. And then when we moved to Kununurra from Darwin, that's when I started being sexually abused by my cousin. So when that all came out, when I was like 14 years old, to my family, they basically didn't want to acknowledge it. They also called me a liar, and they wanted to sweep it under the rug, under the carpet, and not acknowledge it or not sort it out as a family, not talk to him, not like acknowledge it at all. And so I had to be around family gatherings with him in presence because I was sexually abused by my cousin. You know, I had to grow up around family members who knew what happened to me but didn't want to really acknowledge it. And I had to go to family, you know, gatherings with him there at times. And I don't know, it was just a lot for me to process at the time. And I didn't know how to process it, and I didn't want to process it. I wanted to bury all of these feelings, you know, of my family rejecting me, abandoning me, because that was the biggest form of abandonment for me, was my family like abandoning me in a time when I really needed it, in a time where felt like I needed their support. And realizing my family weren't really who I thought they were when I was 14. Like, my family was supposed to be my protectors, the people who loved me, the people who were there for me, you know, and they weren't that. So that was a lot. That was, in a way, this loss of, at the beginning of the loss of this connection that I had with my family, or the connection that I felt that I had with my family. And all of these experiences combined are not excuses for why I chose to abuse myself with substances when I got to my teenage years, but were a very big part of all of the trauma and emotions that I was suppressing and that I didn't want to feel. And as a result, I instead chose to abuse my body and poison myself, because I developed like such a self-loathing towards myself. I hated myself. I was very angry at my family. I was very angry at myself. I was very angry with my mom. I just felt very oppressed and controlled and ignored and shut out by my family, and my mother emotionally shut out by all of my family. It was like I wasn't allowed to bring up these feelings. I wasn't allowed to, you know, process through these feelings, because as well, if I was to start crying in my home, if I was to start raging, I'd get a belting, or I'd, you know, be shut down. So I wasn't able to fully express myself growing up in my home, like fully process my emotions. I resorted to, you know, shutting myself off from the world, from my family, from my mum. And I used to just spend hours in my bedroom, and, you know, I even got a slap in the face for doing that. So if you can imagine, if I started raging or processing my rage in that house, I would have basically gotten a belting for it. Not allowed to express rage. Every time I expressed rage as a kid, I was belted for it. So I had to kind of like bottle up all of these emotions, and I hated myself so much that, you know, I resorted to substance abuse, wanted to kill myself every day. I thought about dying every day of my life right up until my early 30s. I entertained that thought of, I wish I wasn't here, I wish I didn't exist. So yeah, in the end, I just actually wanted to escape from my feelings. I wanted to push away my feelings and the deep sadness and anger that I felt in my soul, the deep sadness about losing all this loss of connection with my family, including my mum, my grandparents, and my extended family, such as my aunties and uncles. So in the end, I just wanted to escape from my feelings. I wanted to push away the deep grief and sadness that I had around my sexual abuse and how I was treated by my family in relation to my sexual abuse. And I wanted to push away this grief and sadness that I felt about this loss of connection with my mum, my nana and my granddad, and my extended family as well, including aunties and uncles. And I just felt this loss of connection, and I felt this anger about my family abandoning me and my family turning their back on me. You know, as a 14-year-old, I felt that they really let me down. And I didn't want to deal with those emotions. I didn't want to deal with the hurt and the trauma that I felt about my sexual abuse. I didn't want to feel like any of those feelings. And so I chose to basically bottle up all my emotions and turn to substance abuse. Like, substance abuse was my way of feeling a connection with myself. Like, substances became my friend, my family. Substances gave me a sense of connection. And I say that in quotation marks because it wasn't really. It was just fulfilling a hole inside of me. And so my addiction issues started when I was 14 years old, 15 years old. And, you know, it starts out with, you know, a cigarette, and then it progresses to pot, and then to trips and acid, and then onto narcotics. And so basically, since I was 14 or 15 years old, I struggled with substance abuse right up until my early 30s, which is when I, you know, started my journey to sobriety at the age of 32. And throughout that whole time, you know, I was just partying and getting wasted and getting caught up in toxic relationships. And I even got caught up in religion. I became a Mormon, you know, because I thought that was a way out of my addictions and to create a better life for myself. And it was a way for me to stop feeling lonely, because a lot of my addictions to substances were driven by, again, a loneliness because of the loss of connection I felt with my family. So I became deeply lonely and deeply empty in life. I felt like I just didn't fit in or belong anywhere. So, you know, substances was a way for me to fit in and belong with certain friends and groups of people. And so that's, you know, been my journey with my addictions with substances. It was, you know, basically driven by a lot of this pain that I didn't want to feel from my childhood and my desire to avoid my emotions. And I could have chosen differently. You know, I'm not saying that my childhood was an excuse for what I did. I'm saying that there are many factors that played a part in why I chose to abuse myself, because I could have chose differently. I could have chose to love myself. I could have chose love, you know, over pain, over fear, you know. I could have chose to feel and express all of those emotions. I could have, but it didn't happen that way. I chose to do this to myself, and I have had to bear the consequences of those choices. My life became very painful towards the end, you know. My life became very painful emotionally and physically. My life became very lonely. My life became very stagnant. My life was going nowhere. My dreams weren't growing. I wasn't, you know, achieving my goals, my dreams. Nothing was growing in my life. My addictions to substances created a lot of pain in my life and also caused a lot of pain in other people's life because of my choice to abuse myself and to abuse other people in the process of abusing myself. You know, as I mentioned, you become very selfish when you are highly addicted to something, or you are just trying to escape from your emotions. You become very selfish towards other people, and you cause a lot of harm to other people in that place. And I was very selfish with other people. I've been very selfish all my life. I wanted everyone else to love me, but I didn't want to love myself, and I didn't want to love them in return. So yeah, it wasn't until my early 30s that I decided that I wanted to change for my life. So yeah, it wasn't until my life became very painful that I decided I wanted change in my life. Unfortunately for me, it took having to get to the point where life became pretty unbearable for me to want to change. And so I decided to get clean and choose differently for my life. So I've spent the past 10 years, working on myself, facing all of the pain that I didn't want to feel. So it took me over 30 years to get to that point of wanting to deal with the pain of my life and my childhood. And that's how I have been able to get to 10 years of sobriety. And I know I will never go back. I've been around drugs and alcohol since then, and you can put me in a room full of drugs and alcohol and it won't affect me. I just don't have a desire for it at all because I choose to love myself. Now I want to love myself. I want to grow. I want to heal. And I know that to me is just not attractive anymore because I've been able to experience the positive benefits of doing this healing work over the past 10 years and feeling more fulfillment and joy in my life, seeing my life grow in different areas, such as, getting my degree in music, seeing my musical skills grow and develop, and, meeting my partner that I'm with now and having her come into my life and cultivating a more loving relationship with somebody compared to my previous relationships. This has been the most loving relationship I've ever been in, where we both desire to grow, we both desire to heal, we both desire to work on ourselves. And we can be completely honest and blunt with each other, about our unloving behavior, and we take responsibility for it, and we do our best to take on each other's feedback and take responsibility for where we're falling short. So it's been the most loving and healthy relationship I've ever attracted into my life, and I'm just feel so blessed for that and so grateful that not only have I been able to engage my passions. Another big thing is getting to know God over the past 10 years and I've been attempting to develop a relationship with God, which, has at times not gone too well. And but it's been a blessing to have God come back into my life, to be following my passions and to be developing a loving relationship with my partner, Nikki, who I believe is my soulmate and who, I feel is the right person for me, is my person, is my mate. And so, it's just been a beautiful journey, painful journey, but beautiful because, like I said, I haven't been able to reach out to my addictions to escape anymore. I've been facing all of my pain and trauma over the past 10 years, and that's the secret to getting sober for life. If you want to know how to get sober for life, just start discovering and desiring to discover what are the emotions driving you to want to harm yourself, and where do they come from, and how were they caused inside of you in your childhood. And to start to desire to love yourself, that's a big part of healing your addictions to substances, is growing a love for yourself, growing a desire to love yourself, growing a desire to love others, growing a desire to love the environment. Without desire to love, you're going to really struggle to heal your addictions. And it could be anything. For me, my addictions were substances, but it can be any addiction, anything that you use externally to avoid how you feel is an addiction. So whatever your addiction is, the way to healing any addiction is about facing the emotions that you don't want to feel, the emotions that are driving you to want to suppress your pain. Also, another thing that I just encourage you to do if you are struggling with any form of addiction that is stunting your growth in life or holding you back is to look at some of your beliefs and attitudes around addictions, because sometimes things that we feel are not addictions are actually big addictions in our life, especially if you are a functioning addict. With functioning addicts, we tend not to see the problem as much as what we do with dysfunctional addicts. So, for example, with the dysfunctional addict, the one that goes homeless, who can't take care of their basic needs, who isn't looking after themselves, who isn't responsible for their bills, their finances, we totally look at as unacceptable. But with the functional addict, who still holds down a job, who still pays their bills, pays their way in society, but on the weekend totally annihilates themselves with substances and goes out partying and, goes to after work drinks all the time, who has to have that one drink after work, we still look at as pretty acceptable in society. So if you are a functioning addict like me, I just encourage you to explore what you see as normal and consider that it might not be normal and it might be very harmful and unloving to yourself. It's something that I had to come into an awareness about and come to see that what I was doing, going out partying on the weekends and, being a social consumer of recreational substances was actually harming me, whether I had a job or not. I've always worked throughout my life, but I've always struggled on the side with these addictions. I've always struggled with going out and partying and just completely wiping myself out. So I had to come into an awareness that it's actually not fun. It's actually not being sociable. It's actually harming me and it's keeping me back from fulfilling my potential in life. So the main things that I would consider if you want to know how to get sober for life is to develop a desire to face all of the pain and trauma that you are running from and wanting to escape from that exists inside of your soul as emotional pain. Develop a desire to love yourself, to love others, and to love the world that you live in. Develop a desire to give up some of your attitudes and beliefs around what is normal and acceptable when it comes to drug and alcohol consumption. Because if you feel it's normal to go out once in a while and take drugs and drink alcohol and let your hair down and, all of that, you'll never give up your addictions. And if you think it's normal to crack open a beer every single day after work and just have the one, well, you'll never give it up. And if you want to get sober and stay sober, you've got to look at some of these attitudes and beliefs that you might have around what is normal and acceptable when it comes to drug and alcohol consumption, and then also what is unacceptable when it comes to drug and alcohol consumption. And I just encourage you to open your mind and consider that what you feel might be normal and acceptable just might not be normal, just might not be loving, just might not be what was intended for our existence here on this earth. Because I know here in Australia, party culture is very normal and accepted in society. It is very normal to have after work drinks. It's very normal to have drinks at every work function. It is very normal to go out to festivals and dance parties and get wasted and drink. It's very normal to have one drink after work to unwind. It's very normal to have a glass of wine with dinner. It's very normal and acceptable to, have a sociable drink. And I just feel we're not really considering what these normal things that we do is actually doing to our soul, is actually doing to help us avoid our emotions, what it's doing to our spiritual, welfare. We're not taking into consideration the harm that it's doing on that end of the spectrum. Because if we see that it's not really doing harm to us immediately in our physical life, in our existence, then we see that it's no harm at all, but yet we're not considering the long-term harm that it's doing in our life. So that's just something to consider. And so I just really wanted to share from my heart, what it's taken me to heal my addictions to substances, the road that led to my addictions to substances, the road that I could have taken, instead of my addictions. I could have chose to feel through some of my pain and trauma. I could have chose to deal with some of this hurt and pain that I didn't want to deal with. So I just wanted to share that consider that addiction is a choice that we make. It's not a disease that we are born with. Yes, there are contributing factors that create a certain hole in our soul that might make us more susceptible to drug and alcohol addiction. But at the end of the day, we do have free will to choose whether we want to go down that road and do what our ancestors and our family have done before us, or do we want to go down a different road and choose, and choose a path that is not very often chosen, So we still have free will. And like I said, yes, there are definitely experiences and certain circumstances that create this damage and emotional trauma inside of a person. But we do have the choice to heal it or continue down a path of destruction. So I just want to let you know that no matter who you are, no matter what your addiction is, no matter what your struggle with in life, everything is 100% healable. It just requires a lot of will and faith and courage to make a different choice and to face all of the pain that we don't want to face in our life. And you're going to have to go through some pain in order to heal your addictions to substances, whether that is your physical withdrawals, whether that is the emotional pain that you're going to have to face. You will inevitably have to face the emotional pain that you're running from. And depending on what kind of addictions you have, you might have to go through some physical withdrawal symptoms. But again, if you're processing your emotions throughout that process, you're going to be on your way to healing addictions forever. So I just encourage you, if you have goals in life, if you've got passions you want to try, if you've got dreams that you've been sitting on, if you want to meet the one for you, if you want to create loving, healthy relationships, if you want to grow emotionally, if you want to start healing and becoming more sensitive, if you have any goal in life to better your life, to fulfill your potential, just know that you can heal anything that you put your mind to. It's possible to heal addictions. It is 100% possible to create the life that you desire. It just takes a lot of work, a lot of faith, a lot of courage, a lot of commitment, and a lot of desire to want to love yourself and love other people. Trust me, life has been so much better without these toxic addictions in my life. Yes, I've experienced a lot of pain over the past 10 years, but that's a good thing. Letting out my pain has been the best thing for me. It hasn't been easy. But yeah, there are just so many benefits to giving up your addictions to substances, and there are just so many benefits to going through this healing process and feeling emotions and processing through grief and rage and fears and terrors. But yeah, there are just so many positive benefits to being sober. I feel like life is way more fulfilling and meaningful being sober. There are just no words. There's just no words to describe the feeling of what it's like to be sober and what it's like to get to this point of being 10 years sober, and the peace that I feel, the joy, the happiness that I feel from doing that. And of course, my happiness isn't 100% complete because healing is a lifelong journey. However, life is so much better. These 10 years of my life have been so much better than the previous 30 years of my life. And I can only encourage you to do the same. Thank you for joining me in today's video. If you enjoy videos like this, I can encourage you to check out my other playlist up here on the screen or links in the description. I'll also put some resources down below as well that might help you out in your journey to sobriety, no matter what your addiction is. And also, if you enjoy videos like this, you might enjoy this playlist up here, and I'll put some links in the description of some free resources to help you in your journey to sobriety. And also, if you want more personal interactions from me, behind the scenes, first look previews of anything that I do, you can head over to my Patreon. It's free to join as well. But thank you so much for joining me here today, and I'll see you in the next video.